Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment of our program is brought to you by the Appy Lodge. If you are looking to head to Sevier County, take in all the holiday lights and spectacle this month, head to the Appalachian Lodge. Right in Gatlinburg, the Appy Lodge is run by the same folks who own Parkside Cabin Rentals, and they are so booked up right now, they said, hey, tell folks about our Appy Lodge. So here we are. And as a matter of fact, for those of you watching our show, if you visit theappylodge.com and then do the /TSS, I know it's a lot to remember, theappylodge.com /TSS, you get 10% off your room. The Appy Lodge, just by checking out that website right there. Go do so. The Appalachian Lodge right in Gatlinburg. All right, want to welcome in the final member of today's panel, former Vol assistant coach, former D1 basketball player, Mark Pancratz. Mark, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
It was awesome, thanks.
All right, very good. Rick Barnes and others in the men's basketball program have contracted COVID. That caused the whole program to shut down for a couple of weeks. 4 games already lost. We'll discuss that and the impact of that a little bit later. But what I want to ask you is, a couple of weeks ago, Rick Pitino was looking at this landscape, and now he's at Iona College. He said, why don't we do May Madness this year? Start in January and play till May. Push this thing back. And there were some other coaches that came out and said, yeah, I kind of agree with him. My question, as a former player, as a former coach, the NCAA obviously didn't do that. They could still stop it right now and restart it, I guess. Are there pluses? Are there minuses to doing that? Are there reasons you would say, oh, no, this is too big of a hoop, you can't jump through this? I mean, right now, we're in a world where everybody's jumping through bizarre hoops. Are there any drawbacks to making it January to May this year?
Well, yeah, the NCAA needs to make this happen. From a March Madness being canceled last year for budgetary reasons, they've got to find a way to play this tournament. I don't think by pushing it back, what you're going to run into is NBA guidelines and getting that season started, declaring for that draft. You're going to have school guidelines. If you're moving venues, what are going to happen with venues? It's just going to be a lot of moving parts to be able to move it back. And then you talk about the vaccine with non-medical personnel. If they're getting it come January, is there enough difference come January to impact the season to where you're not having to cancel games? I don't know. I think really if you're not going to have an effect of COVID, you're looking at really having to push it back to February and March. Then you're getting into a July madness, and I don't think that's possible. So I don't know how much would change by pushing it back to January.
Okay, well, that's what you guys agree with that? I mean, we talked earlier in the show about how it's getting worse right now. So many people you see out on the roads doing the Thanksgiving, their Christmas thing, I'm sure they're going to do it. They're ignoring the recommendations of doctors and scientists because we don't want to trust them. My guess is this isn't going to be better in January. So do you think that delaying to January would be beneficial, or do you say just play the thing and see what you can get done? Where are you?
I say you play as many games now and see when you can get done, because as you mentioned, there is no assurance that things are going to be better in January. There's no assurance they'll be better in February. We don't know who all is going to have access to the vaccine. So I say you get in as many games as you can. I've enjoyed watching a number of games already, but I say you get in as many right now, and then if you have to alter things later, you do it. But I would not change that right now just because of the element of the unknown.
John, I think there's 2 big things to why it'd be difficult to push it back and why maybe they've been hesitant to do it. One is players opting out. If you make that grand declaration early that we're not going to play till January, or even later, there's going to be kids that'll say, no, I'm good, I'll work out on my own, I'll prepare for the NBA draft. And another thing is I think the NCAA is like the College Football Playoff Committee. They are scared to death of moving things back and then risking it not ending and getting to the finish line and taking place. I think their approach, that's why they'd rather have a choppy, jagged route to get to the finish line, but at least you have some changes to the regular season, but you're not putting the whole event, which makes the NCAA all that money, at risk. And I think if they start out moving it, then you're really up against it and you don't have the flexibility. Now they have some more flexibility. The schools can work it out. They can still have their championship games. So I think those are 2 really big parts of it.
And they're looking at possibly moving the entire tournament to one location in Indianapolis this year. And you've had some coaches say, I don't know how you do that, but they're looking at different options right now because, as you mentioned, you've got to have that tournament this year. Yeah. I mean, the schools that don't make their money from football, and that's most of them, They're desperate. I mean, that you're talking about programs shutting down if you go 2 years without a tournament and them not getting their check. That could be devastating.
Well, and you know, I had the same thought when I'm watching Kentucky play Morehead State over the weekend. It's like, can Morehead State afford the same protocols to combat COVID like Kentucky can? Right. Well, if Morehead State affects Kentucky, that's a bigger impact on the NCAA. So why wouldn't the NCAA make some parameters around who you can actually schedule against, and then some travel requirements of why getting planes and why do all this stuff, you know, and then the clarity for the NCAA. It's what bothers me as a coach, as just an observer. You know, Gonzaga has 2 kids test positive after a game. Then they go ahead and play the next day versus Auburn. Like, how does that make sense? Right. I just think there needs to be more transparency and communication on what is allowed and what isn't, as opposed to just letting anybody, what it seems though, do what they want.
Well, I mean, it's by league. I'm guessing Gonzaga's league has a totally different set of protocols than the SEC, clearly, because when you get Rick Barnes in Tennessee with it, pull the switch. They shut her down for 2 weeks, as opposed to, we'll see you tomorrow on the court. Yeah, agreed. That is it's going to be interesting to see how they're able to pull off an NCAA tournament where, let's say that they do get 64 teams in. I think it'll be a smaller tournament this year. We'll see. But let's say they get 68 teams in. 68 teams get in. Some team's going to get it on the day before. Then what do? Does that team that they were playing get an automatic bye into the next round? I just think, like everything else, this year's basketball season is going to be very hit or miss right on through the end of the tournament. When we come back, let's take a look at, I'll throw out what I expect to be Tennessee's starting lineup. We'll see if these guys agree. And then I'll ask the question, you've lost some of these preseason games already. How much does that set Tennessee back in terms of figuring out rotations, figuring out lineups? You'd like to have your normal preseason before you get into the conference play. Now you're going to get 4 games. As of today, 4 games before the conference game. How big of an issue is that? We'll ask the coach. Come on back on the Sports Source.